Hello, and welcome to the final chapter of Falling for Truth. A very short chapter, which is there simply to wrap up the entire text and present a small overview. Chapter 9, a summing up. Spirituality means to die to the truth, not to create what we want. It is understandable to expect that the further along the spiritual path one goes, the more sensible and clearly defined things should become. Toward the end of a search, however, one may find oneself becoming less certain about, well, everything. This may cause the seeker to question the worth of the spiritual search itself, or simply if one is dismally failing at it. Why do most teachings fail to account for it? The reason is that most paths do not see the need to first accurately define the self who is looking for the truth, and no final answer can be appreciated so long as the I, who would be its happy recipient, is still identified with any number of false or lesser selves. John Kent. I am sitting with Anders for a coffee in a small cafe in Stockholm Old Town. It's touristy, but a nice place on a cool fall day to be surrounded by the ambiance of some 18th century architecture. Along the way, he and I have become friends. We will stay in touch, meet up, and talk about regular topics. Today, however, we are meeting one final time in regard to this book. Tomorrow, I will send the completed manuscript to the publishers. As we both take a moment to stretch in our chairs, he asks a pertinent question. So how do you feel about the book? And there it comes. I knew he was going to ask that question. In truth, I've been thinking myself about how I would answer that query in the last couple of days. Now that it has been asked, I have no other option but to open my mouth and see what words spill out. All in all, I think I'm fine with it. I want to thank you for all your effort in this project. There's no way I could have gotten to this place without your questions on the material. Oh, I was just doing my job, he says. And besides, it was fun to delve into topics I never thought of before. Fun or not, it had quite an impact on the presentation, including the decision to add some of our conversations directly to the book, to give a kind of personal touch. As for the material, you know that this is over 10 years of work for me. I probably wrote at least 30 versions of this manuscript, ripped them up, and began again. Sometimes I wonder if I could have written 20 or 30 novels during the same span of time. I could have been Dan Brown on steroids. Instead, I kept working on the same book, over and over again. In a sense, I was Phil Connors, and this book my Groundhog Day. Does that make me Ned Ryerson? Oh no, Ned was in a class of his own when it came to annoyance. Maybe you were more like the Chris Elliott character. What was his name in the movie? I hate when this happens. I should know this. Larry, right. You're like Larry, the cameraman, trying to make me look good while not taking too much of a beating from the occasional shot from Phil the Jerk. Maybe that should be your new name, Howdy the Jerk. Better than some Indian guru-inspired holy-sounding name all these people out there come up with, I guess. There would be no surprises with what the readers are getting. Why do you think this book took you so long to complete? A few reasons, I guess. I pause for a moment to collect my thoughts. The first is that writing the book was part of my own journey, taking what I experienced, read, and intuited, then finding a way to write it on paper. Doing that meant I had to own it. That also meant that things that were not settled inside would not come out well on the page. Every revision was about finding something more in the text that wasn't owned. Secondly, it was challenging to write honestly. Most of the big spiritual novels are made-up fantasies. Things take longer to write when you know your reader probably won't like it. So that became more of the case when I began to understand that the reader might put items written in here into play within their own life. I had to really consider what I was presenting, pointing to difficult subjects, yet not putting anyone in a danger area simply from reading it. I had to write this in such a way which wouldn't suggest blindly following a single word, making sure everyone realizes this book is only a pointer, and offering the suggestion that the reader examine and take heed of it all on their own. The material came out fairly well, I think. Well, the book could be better, of course. For quite a while there was a great deal of spiritual ego in the writing. Be happy you didn't see some of the early versions. As that view of specialness dropped, more and more was rewritten. It led more to presenting my own experience, as well as some of the books, movies, and people that helped to explain some of what I had seen. Something like this could be rewritten again and again for the next 20 years, and still be finding something new to add or be said differently. There also comes a time with any project where you feel it has arrived at a decent port, and it is time to let go and move on. I feel that I've reached that place. I had also wanted to include my chapter from The Power of Then on pyramids. So many spiritual seekers have an acknowledgement of Egypt's pyramids and granite stonework, but since they've not studied them or seen the right areas up close, they have no idea just how amazing they are. We cannot cut the granite today with all of our technology. We cannot build the large pyramids with their perfect inner granite passages today. Let that sink in. What did they know? What could they know? What power did they have? And what of it can cross the boundary of time to reach us today? Our server comes by and asks if we need anything else. I pause on the thought that maybe some type of pastry might be good, but decide against it. Rather, I decide to get one at another shop around the corner after I say goodbye. Anders looks at his watch. I'm heading off to meet up with my wife at 3 o'clock at a nearby art gallery. We have a few minutes before I have to get rolling and cross the bridge, with the pastry, of course. He asks a final question of me. And what is the message that you most hope a reader will find in here? I guess it would be, as Rabindranath Tagore said, "You can't cross the sea merely by standing and staring at the water." The search for the essence or truth or totality requires the combination of commitment and action. No matter how good a book or a piece of information might be, it still means little if we do not put on our shoes and begin to walk ourselves. The second item would be for people to really examine the actions that they are taking. Are those actions designed to get them somewhere, or just designed to make them feel better and safe? Finding truth may or may not make one feel better. Running to so many gurus and teachers out there who make big money and importance off the seekers, while doing little for anyone but their own inflated self-importance. I would much rather spend my time with the people who give up their time to care for unwanted animals, for no reward, rather than most of the modern spiritual teachers. Hopefully my Jacob's Ladder chapter will make the reader think about all this. To see that 95% of everything classified as spirituality is truly no higher than the first stage pyramid. That is because spirituality, as it is presented, is all emotional. There is always that element infused into prayer, meditation, positive thinking, astrology, tarot cards, talking with the dead, acupuncture, herbs, Reiki, channeling, chakra cleansing, and the like. The emotional element wants us to feel better, to be happier. As long as something has an emotional focus for being implemented, it puts the activity in the first pyramid. Again, it's not bad or anything. That is fine. And very useful, too, like when you're sick. However, a seeker who really wants to go to the depths, and perhaps beyond the cave, must finally recognize this and take their practice to the next level. That would be the second pyramid mind elements. Right. The second pyramid is mainly mental, the examination of mind and thought and the dream and whatnot. However, this is not done to feel better or to change it. Rather, one does this to see who is thinking, what thought is, and why thought happens. It is a real shift in spiritual work. Some people do it without a formal practice or having anything to do with something like Zen. Yet that's just because the dream, in some way, became so painful. As a result, they got tired of trying to fix anything or fall into distraction, and instead decided to stare directly at it. That is something I hope this book can get across. What the book has mostly to say is for those examining the self, either already in the second pyramid or heading towards it. But not for the third. Not really. I could only mention some pointers here. Besides, if somebody really is in the third pyramid of work, generally a book is not going to help them much. It would have to be the right book for sure. At that stage, they are sort of making their own path with each step they take. They truly become a supreme examiner, even if they don't realize it. In fact, something such as poetry or artwork on the subject might be more valuable, a work that can access the subconscious directly. That leads back to Rose's suggestion with this material that an important part of one's path is to pass it on. No matter where we are, even if we are low on Jacob's ladder and know it, we still have something to share that can be of help. Even if it is simply sharing a mistake we made, or an addiction or obsession we overcome, revealing those times to someone struggling with the same thing. To find ways to be of service is a signal to the universe that we will not be greedy with what we get. Such an action reveals that we share what we know as we can. The first major work I wrote was The Power of Then, on the wisdom of the ancient world. That book could be seen as a first pyramid book, going through Negretto to show how the ancient way could create a better functioning. This book is the work of the second pyramid, seeing the mind in reality, awakening beyond the separate self, my alchemic book of albedo. Now I can begin what I would guess would be the final book, the work mostly ignored by everyone, kind of like the middle Khafre pyramid at Giza. Majestic, perhaps the oldest on the site, sitting lonely while everyone stares at his big brother beside or the Sphinx. But this third pyramid stage of Roberto is coming now, in my life and in my writing. I think of this current place in my life as I sit quietly, just running my index finger around the rim of my coffee cup. Anders seemingly is somewhere in his own contemplation as well. Our coffee is almost finished, and it is time for me to get going. My last thought about this book is that it has been my attempt to pass on a few small things from my experience, again, even if they might be small. The piles of notes that I carried on my back for so long are open to the breeze, to be carried wherever the wind sees fit to scatter them. Maybe there will be another book, maybe not. But it is time to turn out the lights on this movie. Anders, no matter how nice the cave is, sometime we all have to move on. I hold up my cup with the last bit of coffee in it. Here's to exit doors. I swig the last of my coffee and he does the same. With that, I head to the open door of the cafe where I hear the sounds of Stockholm again. I turn once more at the exit to wave back to Anders. See you soon, I say, before stepping onto the street to continue my journey. Thank you for listening to Falling for Truth, all of the 9 chapters that have been read. Hopefully there was something small and useful in the book and the reading for you. There is an appendix of 6 other chapters or smaller sections, but I've decided not to read those. I will leave those as something for those who have purchased the book. Again, thank you for joining me on the journey of reading this book. It's been a very good experience for me to, in a sense, revisit what I wrote, and like I said in that last chapter, kind of release it to the wind to let it all go and do what it wants to go and do. Cheers, everyone.